Saturday night in January. 30 below zero outside. The picture on your television starts sliding upward. The whole image rolls like a film reel that will not stop. You can see half of Foster Hewitt's face at the bottom and the other half at the top. And hockey night starts in 40 minutes. Your father slaps the top of the set. Nothing. Slaps it again. The picture snaps back for 3 seconds, then dies. He's already on the phone. 20 minutes later, a van pulls into your driveway, engine left running so it will not freeze. A man walks to your door carrying a case full of vacuum tubes. He stomps the snow off his boots. He takes them off at the entrance. Your mother would not have it any other way. He fixes your television in his stocking feet. Foster Hewitt's voice fills the living room. Just before the second period, your father pours him a scotch. Nobody says thank you. Nobody needs to. He will be back in 3 months when the next tube blows. Every town in Canada had that man. Every main street had his shop. And now they are all gone. This is how it started, and why none of it survived. Drop a comment and tell us where in Canada you grew up watching. We would love to hear it. Let's start with how Canada got television in the first place, because it didn't happen the way you'd think. Before there was a single Canadian channel, thousands of families were already watching TV. They were picking up American signals, Buffalo, Detroit, Seattle. If you lived anywhere near the border, and 80% of Canadians did, you could put up an antenna and pull in stations from the other side. By 1950, around 30,000 sets had been sold in Canada. No Canadian programming existed. Every single one of those families was watching American television. The government saw this and panicked, not because of the technology, because of what it meant. A nation of people glued to a foreign country's culture every single evening. One politician summed it up perfectly. The choice, he said, was between the state or the United States. So, CBC rushed to launch. On September 6, 1952, in Montreal, the network went on the air. 2 days later, on September 8, 1952, in Toronto, the debut was a disaster. The station identification card was placed upside down and backwards, seconds before they went live. The first face Canadians ever saw on their own television was a weatherman named Percy Saltzman doing the forecast with a piece of chalk. After him came a puppet show, some speeches, and a young pianist named Glenn Gould. The whole broadcast lasted less than 3 hours. Then the screen went dark. But it didn't matter. Canada had its own television, and everything changed. Now here's the thing nobody talks about. Television sets in the early 1950s were outrageously expensive. A basic black and white set cost $300 to $500. The average manufacturing wage in Canada was about $50 to $60 a week. That means a television cost 2 to 3 months of your pay. Not your savings, your pay. Before rent, before food, before anything. And then you needed the antenna. A proper rooftop aerial with a rotator could cost as much as the set itself. You'd watch your father up on the roof on a Saturday morning in October, bolting aluminum rods to the chimney, running cable through a hole drilled in the window frame, while your mother shouted up whether the picture was coming in yet. For families outside the cities, there was the catalog, the Eaton's catalog, the Sears catalog. You'd flip to the electronics section and find the Viking brand, made by Electro Home in Kitchener, Ontario, or the Silvertone from Sears. You'd fill out the order form, mail it in, and wait. Weeks later, a truck would arrive with a wooden crate. Your father and the delivery man would carry it into the living room. The whole family gathered around while he plugged it in. And when that screen lit up for the first time, gray and grainy and miraculous, nobody said a word. That television became the most expensive thing in your house after the house itself. So when it broke, and it broke constantly, you didn't throw it away. You couldn't afford to. You fixed it. A vacuum tube television had anywhere from 15 to 25 tubes inside it. Glass tubes. Fragile. Hot. They burned out the way light bulbs burned out, regularly, without warning. You would be watching Front Page Challenge on a Tuesday night, and the picture would just vanish. Sound still there. Screen black. Or the picture would start rolling. Vertical hold gone. Round and round the image went, like a slot machine that never stopped. The first thing everyone tried was a slap. And you already know it worked often enough that it became step one in every Canadian household. A loose tube would reseat itself from the impact. Pictures snapped back. Your father sat down like nothing happened. But when a slap did not fix it, you went to the drugstore. This was the part kids loved. Your father would pull off the cardboard back of the set. Every television had a warning sticker about electrocution, and he would ignore it completely. Then he would start pulling tubes out of their sockets. He'd put them in a paper bag, hand the bag to you, and send you on your bicycle to the nearest tube tester. Canadian Tire had them. The drugstore had them. The hardware store had them. Big metal cabinets the size of a refrigerator with rows of sockets on the front. You would look up the tube number on the flip chart, find the right socket, plug it in, flip the switch, and watch the needle. If it pointed to good, you put it back in the bag. If it said replace, you bought a new one from the stock drawer underneath. $1 or $2 per tube. You'd ride home, your father would push them back into the sockets, and 9 times out of 10, the picture came back. But when the tube tester could not solve it, you called the repairman. He arrived in a panel van, tools rattling in the back, and a tube caddy, a portable case with compartments for every tube type you could imagine. You already know the winter ritual. Boots off, stocking feet into the living room. He'd carry his caddy in stocking feet into the living room and take off the back of the set. The inside was warm. You could smell it, heated dust and hot glass and solder. The tubes glowed orange in their sockets. He would pull the suspect ones, test them with a portable meter, and swap in replacements from the caddy. The repairman would hold a small vanity mirror in one hand and watch the screen with the other while reaching into the back of the set. Children were sometimes allowed to hold the flashlight. If the problem was deeper than tubes, a blown transformer, a cracked flyback, or a bad capacitor, he'd suck his teeth and tell your father he had to take the set back to the shop. That was the sentence every family dreaded because it meant days without television. In the summer, you survived. In January, you already know what that felt like. A house call cost about $25. Parts and labor were $20 an hour on top of that. Expensive, but a new set cost $300. You did the math and you called the repairman. Now here's what you need to understand about Canadian television to see why the repairman mattered so much. It was not just entertainment. In a country this big, this cold, this spread out, television was the only thing that connected everyone. Hockey night in Canada began on television on November 1st, 1952. Foster Hewitt called the game from Maple Leaf Gardens. But here's a detail most people have forgotten. For years, the CBC did not broadcast the first period. They began the broadcast an hour after the opening face-off. Why? To protect ticket sales. The Leafs did not want people staying home. So most Canadians had never seen a first period of hockey until the policy changed in 1968. It did not matter. Saturday night, the whole country sat down together. The theme song alone, written by Dolores Claman in 1968, was called Canada's Second National Anthem. And if your television was broken on Saturday night, you either went to a neighbor's house or You sat in silence and listened to Foster Hewitt on the radio as if it were 1938. Then there were the mornings. If you were a kid, you remember the friendly giant at 10:15. That voice, look up, way up, and I'll call Rusty, the drawbridge coming down, the little chairs by the fire, 3,000 episodes from 1958 to 1985. After that came Chez Helene, where you learned your first words of French whether you wanted to or not. Then Mr. Dressup, Ernie Coombs with the tickle trunk, nearly 4,000 episodes. His last message to children was, keep your crayons sharp, your sticky tape untangled, and always put the top back on your markers. Front Page Challenge ran for 38 years. Wayne and Shuster set a record with 67 appearances on Ed Sullivan, more than any other act in history. And they still chose to stay in Canada. Don Messer's Jubilee was the second most watched show in the country after hockey. When CBC canceled it in 1969, people asked questions in the House of Commons. At the end of every night, the screen played "Oh Canada," that 1979 film with the mountains and the wheat fields and the children, then the color bars, then the snow. And if you were still awake, the Indian head test pattern stared back at you with a high-pitched tone that meant the broadcast day was over. Go to bed. There is nothing left. The television carried all of that. Every hockey game, every morning with the friendly giant, every sign off. The repairman kept it alive. And then the repairman was not needed anymore. It happened slowly. The tubes were the first to go. Solid-state transistors replaced them through the 1960s and the 1970s. Transistors did not burn out every 6 months. They did not need warming up. They just worked. And when the tubes disappeared, the drugstore tube testers disappeared with them. Nobody needed them. The metal cabinets were hauled away. The paper bags of glass tubes stopped showing up at the hardware store counter. Then, the Japanese arrived. Sony, Panasonic, Hitachi, Toshiba. Their sets were better built, more reliable, and they got cheaper every year. Canadian manufacturers could not compete. Canadian Marconi, based in Montreal since 1903, quit making televisions in 1966. Electrohome, the pride of Kitchener, Ontario, with 4,400 employees, the company that built the first Canadian color television in 1965, stopped making televisions in 1984. Canadian Admiral went bankrupt in 1981. RCA's plant in Prescott, Ontario, closed in the early 1990s. Every single Canadian television manufacturer was gone. When the sets stopped breaking and the prices kept dropping, the economics flipped completely. A service call at $25 plus parts and labor, or a brand new television at the mall for $299, the math stopped working. The repair shops on Main Street started closing, one by one. The man with the tube caddy and the van retired. His son did not take over the business. Why would he? There was no business left. And then the retailers followed. Eaton's Catalog, the book that brought television to rural Canada, the book that sat on every kitchen table from Newfoundland to British Columbia, printed its last edition in 1976. The company went bankrupt in 1999. Gone. Sears Canada, the other catalog, went bankrupt in 2017. 17,000 retirees lost their pensions. Gone. Hudson's Bay Company had 355 years of continuous operation. It filed for creditor protection in 2025 and closed every single store. Gone. The stores that sold you the television, the shops that fixed it, the catalogs that delivered it to your door, the manufacturers that built it in Kitchener and Prescott and Montreal. All of it, gone. And then came the final blow. August 31st, 2011, Canada switched off its analog television signal. Full power transmitters in 28 markets went digital overnight. The following year, CBC shut down over 600 remaining analog transmitters. That number dropped from 650 to 27. The United States had spent $1.3 billion giving citizens coupons for digital converter boxes. Canada spent nothing. No program, no subsidy, no coupon. 900,000 Canadians who still relied on antennas were told to figure it out. Most of them bought a new flat screen. By 2011, you could get a 32-inch LCD for under $300, less than what your father paid for a black and white set 60 years earlier. Why repair anything? Why call anyone? Just buy a new one. It arrives tomorrow. There is a detail about the early days that says everything about what was lost. In the 1960s and the 1970s, hundreds of communities in northern Canada had no television signal at all. The CBC solved this by physically flying videotapes from Calgary to remote transmitters. Bush planes landed on gravel strips in Yellowknife or Inuvik with a box of tapes. The delay ranged from 1 week to nearly a month. A community might be watching a hockey game played 3 weeks earlier. Nobody cared. It was television. It was connection. In Northern Ontario, a man named David Bro built an illegal network of about 30 pirate TV stations, funded by community donations and televised bingo games. Towns like Wawa had 12 channels of Snow and the CBC. Bro gave them something to watch. An Inuit leader named Rosemary Kuptana called the arrival of Southern television the neutron bomb, the bomb that kills the people but leaves the building standing. That is how powerful television was in this country, and the repairman was the one who kept it running. When the television broke in 1962, you called a man you knew by name. He drove to your house in a snowstorm. He knew which tube always went on your model. He charged $25, and your wife made him coffee. The kids watched him work like he was performing surgery. When the television breaks in 2026, you open Amazon. A new one arrives the next day. The old one goes to the curb. Nobody comes. Nobody knows your name. Nobody stays. If you remember the repairman at your door, or the tube tester at the drugstore, or the friendly giant at 10:15, or the sound of "Oh Canada" as the screen faded to snow, leave a comment below. Tell us what brand your first television was. Tell us the name of the repair shop in your town. Tell us if your father ever fixed it with a slap. Subscribe if you want more stories about the things that disappeared from Canadian life. We have plenty more coming.